Let's go to LSU. So I'm understanding there's a bit of a flu bug. There's some issues there. There's some sickness on the team. They should be ready to go here in, what's it going to be, 10 or 12 days, something in that range. But it does hurt preparation. If you have guys that can't make it out onto the field, you're 2 weeks out.
Yeah. So the good news is LSU has experience dealing with the flu bug. A few years ago, before the Arkansas game, the Harold Perkins breakout game where he had 4 sacks, the team was very sick. I mean, basically, I would venture off to say at least half the team had some variant of sickness. So they at least have experience with that. I do think they'll be ready to go. A lot of the guys that have been dealing with it are still practicing. So it's not like absolutely positively too serious. And most notably, it's the offensive line. This group is going to be very good. And the only question mark they have is the center position. What are they going to do? They lost Charles Turner, but they return all 4 of their other starters. So if DJ Chester, a 4-star out of Georgia, turns out to be a good center, LSU should have the best or one of the top 5 offensive lines in the country.
I believe the point spread on this game was a full touchdown for much of the offseason. I checked last night. We did our USC show. It's dipped to, depending on your service, 5.5 to 6 points. I don't know if that's response to this flu bug and lack of preparation, or it's just, okay, well, these teams should be more similar and more even than we anticipated prior to the summer. So your thoughts about the betting line coming back and because 6 to 7 points is fairly substantial in saying this is a better football team.
Yeah, I think what's been very interesting, Mark, from a betting perspective is actually the total. So it opened at 66 and it's gone down some since then. And 66, as you know, is just ginormous. So that's a big number. What's interesting is LSU and USC over the past 2 seasons, and it makes a lot of sense because the last 2 Heisman winners are from these 2 schools, but they have combined for the most overs. LSU, I think, is number 1, and USC was number 3 in hitting overs. So these 2 teams have played high scoring games with really bad defenses. I actually think it'll be a little bit more in the middle. I think this game will be played in like a 31 to 27 kind of fashion either way. And that's partially because I do think you'll see some positive regression for both of these defenses, right? Both of these teams have too much talent to have defenses as bad as they've been the past couple of seasons. And you can make the strong case that compared to talent, the 2 worst defensive coordinators were on these 2 teams last year, and they're now gone. And both teams, Mark, completely revamped the entire coaching staff, and both teams feel unfreaking believably excited about their new hire. When I've talked to USC sources, they can't quit talking about D'Anton Lynn and the whole attitude shift and what they brought to USC. And then, of course, Blake Baker. Mark, this has been the story behind the scenes at LSU when I've spoken to players, coaches, and all of that. Blake Baker is the story. All right. This guy has brought a new energy. And him and Matt House, not only in terms of actually being a good defensive coordinator, are they opposite, they're also opposites in terms of personalities. There were quite a few LSU players that did not like Matt House, Mark. Blake Baker, if it comes to affability, is up there. He is loved by so many of the players that he's coached. And you see it. You see the energy in practice. You see guys buying into the system. And I have been completely honest about this, Mark, on all shows that I've been on and on my LSU channel as well. I'm very skeptical of the actual personnel. I'm a big Blake Baker guy. You're talking about Texas a minute ago. Texas has Bo Davis. Texas lost Bo Davis to LSU. He's a really good defensive line coach. The defensive coaching staff has been the story of this offseason for LSU, and it's made people truly believe in the staff. And the final thing I'll say about the defense, Mark, is over this specific last week or so of practice, there has been a shift in the LSU defense having better days in the LSU offense. Now, I don't think that's too big of a deal. We have to wait to actually see if they can actually be better on the field. But That wasn't happening last offseason. Jaden was lighting him up every day in practice. And obviously, Garrett's not as good as Jaden, but it is something that the LSU defense has had better days of practice.
So when we make this comparison between the two teams, and there are so many similarities that we've discussed all off season, losing Heisman Trophy winners and the head coaching positions that have fallen to guys that left other premier programs, the whole deal, the offense being prolific, the defense being horrible, the change on the staff. The one constant on the USC side is obviously the play caller, who's arguably the best in the game, versus a change on the offensive side for LSU. So any concerns there with continuity, because that was the side of the ball that was working, and there's a change obviously at the OC position.
Yeah, so Jaden is one of the best, and look, this is going to sound controversial and very biased, but statistically speaking, Jaden is one of the best Heisman winners of all time. Now, I'm not saying he's the best. I'm not saying he accomplished as much as some others have actually won natties or whatever, but it's just the truth. And you lose him. You lose Malik Neighbors, you lose Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, it's just a big deal. But LSU's receiver room has looked really good, Mark. Chris Hilton has taken another step. Chris Hilton was a higher rated recruit than both Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. He's faster than both of them. He's not as good as those guys, but he has become a more well-rounded player. They brought in C.J. Daniels, who, by all accounts, Mark, was the number one rated wide receiver in the transfer portal. Now, there's others, like Evan Stewart is definitely probably better, but in terms of production, he was the best in terms of yards per route run. And then Kyron Lacey is probably going to be an early round draft pick. And they brought in Mississippi State's best receiver last year in Xavier Thomas. So they're going to be good there. They're going to be really good at tight end. You can make a very strong case this is the best tight end room in LSU history. You could also make a very strong case that this is the best offensive line in LSU history. The issue is going from Jaden to Nuss. And Garrett Nussmeier is going to be a very, very good quarterback this year, Mark, in his first year as a full-time starter. Caleb Jackson and Josh Williams should be a really good tandem at running back. It is a little bit of a question, though, because you do have a new play caller. The difference, though, is this play caller, even though he's younger and Joe Sloan, has play calling experience, okay? Not a whole lot of it, but he does have some. He also sat in the chair next to Mike Denbrock every single game. So communication-wise, yes, the guy who's actually calling the shots changes, but the guy who replaces him sat next to him every single day for every single game. And on top of that, he has been the quarterback's coach. I think that also helps out in this situation. Mike Denbrock was the tight ends coach. So, more often than not, your OC is a QB coach. That's going to help out Joe Sloan in this process. I do think Mike Denbrock's really good. There's a reason why Notre Dame paid him what he paid him, and he went back home to the Midwest. But I still think Joe Sloan will be fine. I think this LSU offense will be fine.
Carter's here breaking down LSU in the SEC. You can join him right here on YouTube on Power Hour LSU, Power Hour SEC, Power Hour NFL.
Yeah.
The NFL is just days behind college football, so we're getting excited about that as well.
College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.